the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra performing Serenade from King Christian II's Suite by Finnish composer Jean Sibelius. Soon we will hear music of a different kind, something that a lot of people probably have heard before, performed by Patti Smith, because now time for the Literature Prize presented by Horace Engdahl, member of the Swedish Academy.
Eders Majestäter,
Your Majesties,
Eders Kungliga
Your
Högheter,
Royal Highnesses,
ärade
Your
Nobelpristagare,
Excellencies,
mina damer och herrar.
ladies and gentlemen.
Hur
What brings
sker
about the great
de
shifts
stora omvälvningarna i
in the world of
litteraturens
literature?
värld? Ofta
Often it
genom att
is
någon tar
when
en
someone seizes
enkel
upon a
och
simple,
ringaktad form som
overlooked
ännu inte
form,
räknas till
discounted as
konsten
art
i högre
in the
mening
higher sense,
och får den
and
att
makes
mutera.
it mutate.
Så blev den
Thus,
moderna
at one
romanen
point
till
emerged the
en
modern
gång ur
novel
anekdot,
from
en
anecdote
brev.
and letter.
Så föddes den nya
Thus
tidens
arose drama in a new age from high jinks on planks placed on barrels in the marketplace. Thus songs in the vernacular dethroned learned Latin poetry. Thus too did La Fontaine take animal fables and Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales from the nursery to Parnassian heights. Each time this occurs, our idea of literature changes. In itself, it ought not to be a sensation that a singer-songwriter now stands recipient of the Literary Nobel Prize. In a distant past, all poetry was sung or tunefully recited. Poets were rhapsodes, bards, troubadours. Lyrics comes from lyre. But what Bob Dylan did was not to return to the Greeks or the Provençals. Instead, he dedicated himself, body and soul, to 20th century American popular music, the kind played on radio stations and gramophone records for ordinary people, white and black, protest songs, country, blues, early rock, gospel, mainstream music. He listened day and night, testing the stuff on his instruments, trying to learn. But when he started to write similar songs, they came out differently. In his hands, the material changed. From what he discovered in heirloom and scrap, in banal rhyme and quick wit, in curses and pious prayers, sweet nothings and crude jokes, he panned poetry gold. Whether on purpose or by accident is irrelevant. All creativity begins in imitation. Even after 50 years of uninterrupted exposure, we are yet to absorb music's equivalent of the fable's Flying Dutchman. He makes good rhymes, said a critic, explaining greatness. And it is true. His rhyming is an alchemical substance that dissolves contexts to create new ones, scarcely containable by the human brain. It was a shock. With the public expecting poppy folk songs, there stood a young man with a guitar, fusing the languages of the street and the Bible into a compound that would have made the end of the world seem a superfluous replay. At the same time, he sang of love with the power of conviction everyone wants to own. All of a sudden, much of the bookish poetry in our world felt anemic. And the routine song lyrics his colleagues continued to write were like old-fashioned gunpowder following the invention of dynamite. Soon, people stopped comparing him to Woody Guthrie and Hank Williams and turned instead to Blake, Rimbaud, Whitman, Shakespeare. In the most unlikely setting of all, the commercial gramophone record, he gave back to the language of poetry its elevated style, lost since the Romantics. Not to sing of eternities, but to speak of what was happening around us, as if the Oracle of Delphi were reading the evening news. Recognizing that revolution by awarding Bob Dylan the Nobel Prize was a decision that seemed daring only beforehand and already seems obvious. But does he get the prize for upsetting the system of literature? No, not really. There is a simpler explanation, one that we share with all those who stand with beating hearts in front of the stage at one of the venues on his never-ending tour, waiting for that magical voice. Chamfort made the observation that when a master such as La Fontaine appears, the hierarchy of genres, the estimation of what is great and small, high and low in literature, is nullified. What matter the rank of a work when its beauty is of the highest rank, he wrote. That is the straight answer to the question of how Bob Dylan belongs in literature, as the beauty of his songs is of the highest rank. By means of his oeuvre, Bob Dylan has changed our idea of what poetry can be and how it can work. He is a singer worthy of a place beside the Greeks, beside Ovid, beside the romantic visionaries, beside the kings and queens of the blues, beside the forgotten masters of brilliant standards. If people in the literary world groan, one must remind that the gods don't write, they dance and they sing. The good wishes of the Swedish Academy follow Mr. Dylan on his way to coming bandstands. Standing ovations for this year's Literature Prize here in the Stockholm Concert Hall. The 1,500 guests will now hear one of Bob Dylan's most famous songs, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Orchestration by Hans Ek, performed by Patti Smith.
Where you been, my blue-eyed son? Where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled alongside of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled down 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. Been out in front of a 12 dead oceans. Been 10,000 miles on the mouth of a graveyard. It's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain's gonna fall. What did you see, my blue-eyed son? What did you see, my darling young one? Saw a newborn babe with wild wolves all around it. Saw the highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw the black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw the babe that was just bleeding. I saw the babe that... I'm sorry. It's all 10... Sorry. I'm sorry. Could we start that section? I apologize. Sorry, I'm so nervous.
Please start again. We want to hear it.
So a newborn babe with wild wolves all around it. So a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. Saw a room full of men whose hammers were bleeding. I saw a white ladder all covered with water. Saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain's gonna fall. What did you hear, my blue-eyed son? And what did you hear, my darling young one? Heard the sound of the thunder that roared out a warning. Heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. Heard one person laughing, heard many people laughing. Heard nobody listening. Heard one person starve, heard many people laughing. Heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. Heard the sound of a clown that cried in the alley. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain's gonna fall. Who did you meet, my blue-eyed son? And who did you meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a young man and had a black dog. I met a young woman whose body was burning. I met a young girl, she gave me a rainbow. I met a young man, he was wounded in love. I met another man, he was wounded in hatred. It's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain's gonna fall. What do you do now, my blue-eyed son? And what do you do now, my darling young one? I'm going back out for the rain starts falling. I'm going down deep in the deepest black forest, where the people are many and their hands are all empty, where the pellets of poison are flooded their waters, where home in the valley meets a damp, dirty prison, and the executioner's face is always well hidden, where hunger is ugly, where souls are forgotten, where black is the color, where none is the number. And I'll tell it and think it and speak it and breathe it, and reflect from the mountains so all souls can see it. And I'll stand in the ocean until I start sinking, and I'll know my soul well if I start singing. it's hard, it's hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain's are gonna fall.
This poor Patti Smith, a beautiful interpretation of a hard rain gonna fall, and she just showed that even a superstar like Patti Smith can get a bit nervous at an occasion like this. More than one tear was wept in the audience, as you saw. Special occasion this. I don't think I've seen so many closes before for any soloist here at the prize ceremony. And now time for the presentation of the Economics Prize.